So, hey guys, welcome to Straight Talking Property podcast today. I'm the fill-in Aussie because Ashley is actually dealing with a personal issue. He's had to race off to the doctors, I think. But anyway, all good. His son's wound is open up, which, he had a bit of a fall. Boys will be boys, hey?
Boys will be boys.
Today we're going to not talk about personal injuries or anything, but we're actually going to be talking about how we cope with working from home and how we adapt to it, and in particular the mental well-being and make sure we maintain that. And for that, we've got Immanuel, and we've also got our special guest, Simon Garcia. And so Simon, maybe just introduce yourself so they get a bit of an idea of your background in that.
Yeah, sure. I'd say predominantly a lot of my career was spent trading in investment banks. Yep. So I guess frontline experience of working in quite a high intense, stressful environment. And then for the last 10 years, I've sort of been training and qualifying and working as a psychotherapist. And more recently, also as an executive coach. And I guess a lot of the work I tend to get is within, I guess, people coming from various professions and careers where there is quite a lot of stress. They have various anxieties and kind of how that spills into their home life and managing that work-home life balance.
Yep. And I think that's really been thrown upon us. For most part, they've never really had to work at home, let alone at home with kids. I know, Arlene, my wife, she's on the WhatsApp groups, and it's amazing some of the stories and just, parents who are just pulling their hair out right now because, not only are they having to have kids at home, but they're actually having to manage the homeschooling of kids as well as the partners being there, which they're not used to. And so, we're all facing it. We're all in this, together. And I imagine we're all, feeling at some level anxiety. So what are some of the things we can do? What are some of the things we can, is there simple processes? Is it, is it a morning routine, a daily routine? What would be your initial suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's about kind of bookending because you're working, you're working in this and living in the same environment now. And if you think about a lot of the time, you'd leave and you'd have your commute. You'd head out the door, you'd maybe head to the station, you'd travel to work, be there and come back. Plus the social interaction you have along the way. And so it's trying to recreate part of that. So what you try and do in the morning at the end of the day is almost bookend. Where does my working day begin? Where does it end? Is one of the first things that are introduced with clients. And so it could almost be like after breakfast, just stepping out the door and going for a small walk, keeping with your social distancing and just going out the house as if you're recreating a walk to the station and then coming back. And that's where my working day then starts. Likewise, at the end, it's almost creating that at the other end.
Yeah.
In between, it's important also, even though you're sitting quite stationary, working a lot on Zoom and stuff like that, it's still bringing into your kind of working day, just getting up and trying to go for a walk for a stretch, getting a coffee. Yeah. Some of the things people have introduced is at lunchtime, recreating that lunch break where maybe you do conference calls with your colleagues where you just have lunch together, just to keep that social interaction and avoid that isolation. And some of that, just structuring your working day can help.
It's funny, actually. I'm feeling pretty good right now because, virtually as soon as we went into the lockdown, in fact, actually before we're a week earlier from the lockdown because we had the plans in place and that. But we started 9:30 Zoom meeting for the whole team, and then we had a 5:30 email of how your day went, any issues, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And every Friday we do a virtual lunch where we all jump around and. So we've this week we're actually sending hampers out. Sorry, next week we're sending hampers out to everyone. So we're having afternoon tea all together. So we're sending the same hamper out to the whole team, and we're all having tea. So we've sort of we've done those sort of three things, which is quite good, But yeah, what about Emmanuel? What about yourself? Any?
Yeah, so really it's a combination of the two things that you do. So I do have a routine, as you probably know, is that I get up in the morning and I do my workout every morning without fail, either indoors or outdoors. The weather's so nice now, so I go outside, either my balcony or go for a run and start my day. That creates my endorphins. It gets me in the right positive frame of mind. It gets me set for the day. So like Simon was saying, creating a routine that like I normally do, finish my routine, have my shower, get ready for work. So what I would say is that if people are working from home, definitely got to go outside, whether it be in the front garden, the back garden, get that sunshine, get that light. But if you're working from home, create that space, have a room where, as if you're going to your own office, to create that space so you do have that break, because we do need our own time, we do need to do our own things, and being on top of each other all the time, especially if you had kids at the same time, could be quite difficult. So yeah, all the things that Simon said in terms of having the lunch break, going for the coffee break, I'm doing one of those things, having these kind of interactions. This is still a social interaction. It's still not as good as being sort of face-to-face, but it's pretty damn close. So creating that routine, and at the end of the day, doing something. So for me, it all starts with health, and my health, my exercise, my diet, all of those things are really important. And if you can't get enough sunlight, make sure you get your extra vitamin D, your vitamin C, your vitamin A, get that into you, because that will keep your immune system up, it will keep you up. And if your energy's high, it's going to change your mental state. If you look at sports people, when they're playing sport, because they have more energy, they're in a different state of mind. They're normally smiling. So that's what we want to try and do, is get your body to be moving so it creates more energy. So that's one of the things of my sort of takeaway.
Yeah. So what about one of the things we've had is I've got an agency with about 1,250 properties. And so we've got the staff which have been copying it from the landlords and the tenants. The landlords are concerned about, receiving rent. The tenants are concerned about losing their jobs and paying rent and that sort of thing. Any suggestions, for them on how, they can approach their day, say, for instance? Because I'm sure there's lots of people that are dealing with, and it may not be, tenants and landlords. It might be, suppliers. It might be people wanting to be paid. It might be, customers. It might be, who knows? Any thoughts on that?
You mean sort of managing the frustrations and anxieties around the situation?
Yeah, keeping, I guess their mental health,
I think there's one thing. Maybe something that can help manage the frustration. There's a kind of a 60-second to sort of 2-minute exercise, which, you may find yourself sitting there and frustrated, like, not paying me, how am I going to do this? And stuff starts to bubble up, and that feeling of kind of, anxiety can surface. And one very kind of, I think, short technique which can actually help is what I call kind of this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 senses thing. And the idea is just to kind of come outside your head a little bit. Mm. So it's almost, if you can imagine, if I do kind of a quick demo, if you can imagine you sit in a chair, where you are is fine, and just take a few 2 or 3 deep breaths, just take a moment. And then what you're going to do, you just want to notice 5 things that you can see, where you are, and just take the time to actually write them down. And then after that, you want to sort of notice 4 things that you can touch. And you reach out and you touch them, how hot, cold, smooth, and just really be aware of what's going on. And then you can sort of go 3 things that you hear.
Yeah.
2 things that you can actually smell. And then the last one is 1 thing you can taste. And the idea of this is just to kind of take you outside your thought process in your head and just come into your senses a little bit. And what it can do is you just... Was that the taste one, yeah? And just kind of notice what goes on. And what that will sometimes do is just takes you away from sometimes those anxious thoughts that you were having, the bubbling up that can happen, and then maybe go and revisit it. So it's just one technique. When things really overshoot is kind of recognizing the signs. When we talk about mental well-being and impaired mental health, sometimes it will manifest, if it's not being captured or you're not monitoring it, sometimes it manifests in the physical, like you might get headaches, telltale signs of stress and anxiety, headaches, stomach aches, maybe getting a bit more irritable and angry, or inability to kind of actually do anything, which is kind of more like the freeze. And when you sort of reach that stage, then maybe the time is just seek, where can I get some help, rather than try and, when you reach that, maybe the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 isn't going to be deep enough. It's just a technique to help you just maybe get a respite during the day.
And I suppose it's interesting because, if you're a sole trader and you're pretty much at home by yourself, what support do you actually have? That's going to be very different from someone, say, like in our business where we've got, 40 odd staff, that we have morning meetings and they have interactions between each other. And so there's actually a lot of conversation, and we're forcing them to have a lot of conversation going on. So I guess, you got to play where you're at, if you like.
Yeah, and I also think that when you are managing a lot of people, is as a manager also show maybe a bit more flexibility. That maybe one of let's say if I use the word your reportees may not be the same as another one, and just sort of tuning in and being aware that maybe some of the goals we set have to change because of this is a new environment and being flexible to that, and also just checking in with how they're doing and what do they need from me. You're probably going through your own thing, Matt, your own personal stuff, but there's a responsibility sometimes as a manager, in the welfare of the people who work with you, and just check in and say, what do you need from me? Is there anything I can do? Just to sometimes check in and just give that.
It's
can add a lot.
Interesting. I don't know, from my own experience of this, where we've got the 5:30 emails and also the 9:30 meeting, but you'll pick up points and or you'll see someone's got their video turned off when they don't normally have the video turned off, or somebody will you'll hear screaming in the background on that. And that's sort of the triggers that we're using. And it might be someone saying, I had a crappy day. So that's when we're sort of jumping on the phone and going, hey, how you doing? And having a conversation. And it's amazing how that solves, so much of the issues for us, certainly. But I don't know whether that's across the board will solve everything for everything. But
I think because the work has changed and what's happening has changed and people's mindsets have changed and lots of fear factor, and especially in your business with landlords and tenants and your staff getting it from both ends. I think creating some different working environment and some ideas might actually help. So it might be that before they start the day, you have something really inspiring, motivational or fun so they can start the day laughing. At the end of the day, do something else that allows them to, like a comedy sketch. I used to do it all the time when I had my mortgage business. Beginning and end of the day, we'd do something where everybody starts laughing because you can have shit days, people bombarding you left, right and centre. Also having breaks throughout the day, regular breaks, every half an hour, 40 minutes, take a 10-minute break, just come out of it. And again, explain to your staff, it's never about them. It's always about the customer. The customer is going to dump their crap on them. It's not about them. They're just doing their job. They're just trying to be as helpful as possible to either the landlord or the tenant, and they're just providing a service. So the frustration that's coming from the landlord or the tenant is no reflection of who they are or what they're doing. So it's that constant reminder and that empathy and having that where you've got to have laughter in the workplace. Laughter is a most amazing remedy and medicine for most things. And if you can create that on a regular basis, their work doesn't feel quite so bad.
Yeah. What Simon, you mentioned executive coaching there before.
Yeah.
So what are you executive coaching right now? Have you got?
Yeah.
How has your approach changed now with your coaching from what it was before?
It's in some places it's just about people adopting a different approach when they've got their reportees working at home. So some of it we've touched upon, what can I do, and what support can I offer? But there's also the other thing. But even though these are difficult times, that it doesn't mean that we can't have goals. That these goals still can't be achieved. Maybe we have to kind of revisit, and what was relevant 3 months ago isn't going to be relevant now. And maybe they're goals for the end of the day or the end of the week. So I guess it's kind of inquiring in the conversation whether the previous goals are still relevant. If not, what would be? And some of the kind of techniques is to work is maybe slightly more positive language, which tends to encourage anyway. So when they're talking through around what somebody maybe done through the day, rather than say, what do you think's gone well today or gone well this week and went bad this week, maybe something that you've liked. What do you think that you've liked what you've done today or this week? And rather than say what could have gone better, what could have gone differently and how might you have done that? So just slightly changing the language to put a more positive thing. And just be open, I guess, that we have to be flexible and things can change.
Yeah. I think the goal setting one is a big one because actually when we went into this, one of the first things I was doing, I've been doing daily videos since a week before we actually went in lockdown. And actually what I was really focused on was people setting goals and actually taking this opportunity because for a lot of people, they're at home and there's nothing else to do. They can't really work. They're either furloughed or there's not really a lot of work to do. And so actually now's a good time to actually get those goals and set those goals that, whether it's learning a new skill, we've got guys that are doing their qualification right now, online. And it's amazing some of the, things that are going on. We're planning our a 24-hour walk, where we walk for 24 hours. It's a charity event, so, different people are doing different things. And that's been really impressive. And the great thing is those stories, have created little micro groups that are also working together, which has actually been fantastic. And it gives people purpose, which I think is so important when all of a sudden all your routine is just taken to actually hold on to some of that, So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you have staff right now that are working either remotely or from an office if they need to, creating some sort of incentive reward where they're being recognised for doing over and above the call of duty at this moment in time. It's just people like to feel appreciated. Thank you. Just something small, and it goes a long, long way in terms of their mental state. So just small bits.
100%.
Something that kind of validates. And I think what you're talking about is giving people that meaning and having that purpose still.
Yeah.
I think it sometimes gives people the power to actually carry on with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's for most people who've never been in this situation before. And I think one of the unique things about a recession or a economic shock like this, or any of this sort of shock, whether it be virus or economic, is that you just don't know where it's going. You don't know what the next step is. And I think, even in 2008 when we hit the recession, even at that stage, I knew kind of the track that it was going to take. And I knew we'd get out of it. And I knew there was some certainties there. But with this virus, it's almost wiped out all level of certainty, And in some ways, thank goodness the government come in pretty quickly and said, right, you can furlough workers. You've got these, these loan schemes. You've got, and they created some certainty, which, was really a fantastic move. Because I look at what's happening in the US, and really a lot of those people have no certainty, and they're losing their job, which means they're losing their healthcare at the same time as, you need your healthcare. It's like, it must be an amazing thing over there with the mental health and well-being, of their society, their citizens. It's, incredible.
Now, I personally think the US will have a lot worse areas to do with mental health and stability compared to the UK, with all the different measures that have been put in by the UK government. I also think they're going to put more measures in to allow, the recovery to happen much faster, whereas the US, I think they've got it completely wrong, and only time will tell. But I said, especially with their whole philosophy around money and success and wealth, and by giving most of the money to the companies and not to the people that actually need it, I think it's going to have a long-term effect on the US economy.
Yeah, big time. And I think, talking mental health, mental health is one of those things where it's ongoing, isn't it? It's not something you just, okay, we're out of it and it's fixed, Yeah. So I guess maybe, okay, so as we're heading out, so we survive the work from home, it starts to ease up. I know there's talk about letting 20 to 30-year-olds maybe wander around and things like that. What's your suggestion on coming out to, make sure there's, we let go of the past, I guess, Simon?
You mean coming out of the lockdown, right?
The lockdown.
Okay. Just covering that point.
Says the man in pink shorts.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get that point.
Yeah.
I think the effects of this is two things. Obviously, there's the economic, financial impact that people have suffered, loss of earnings, businesses crumbling. And you've also got the other thing where some people would have known someone, maybe in their family or someone close, who sadly has passed away. So there's also the bereavement side of it as well, which normally getting counselling around that can sometimes be, 3 months after the event. It's not an immediate thing. So I think it's maybe not immediately when we come out of it, because I think when you're kind of still in that heightened sense of fright, I think you need to sometimes create a space to where you actually maybe get help around your mental health and to improve your mental well-being. So I don't imagine it to happen straight away, but I think at some point, it will happen. Beginning to see more inquirers again, where everyone was just kind of, what the hell's going on? What do I, and just trying to survive. Now what I'm seeing is far more inquiries about people contacting around, some people at home. It's to do with relationship counselling. We're at home for the first time, we're struggling. And it's very, but people are now seem to have a bit of a space to actually look and focus around their mental health. And there's been quite a lot out there as well on social media, which has been a good thing. Yeah. But again, I'd encourage people to look at this like you look at your physical well-being. You know, there's still a little bit of a stigma around it. If we've got a bad back, we'd go and see a chiropractor. We wouldn't think twice. Bad tooth, we'd go and see a dentist. But still, it's recognizing the signs. So I really think people just tune in physically for the symptoms of how your mental health may be impaired. I think that's going to be the telltale. And it's just, as I said before, more irritable, maybe some stomach aches, maybe some headaches, maybe just unwilling to really do anything and much more stuck in a space than you would be. Just some of the telltale signs. Yeah. And then just reach out for some help, because what it is, it's just a conversation really with someone who will actually listen. Someone who can actually listen and can tune in. If you've got friends, it's great to talk to friends and supportive family. But one thing that happens is you might be feeling a certain way and say, look, I'm really suffering, I'm stressed, I'm not sleeping. And what happens is that person might go, I'm not sleeping as well. It doesn't really help. But when you kind of get maybe that mental health professional, there's a different approach. But reaching out, talking to someone close is definitely, I think, sometimes the first move to finding support.
I do think there's been less stigma around people getting help around mental health, especially over the last 18 months. It's now something that's recognised. People know it in different areas, different levels, and even things like, Caroline Flack, when she committed to, people now know that people need help, they need support. It's not a weakness to ask for it, it's actually a strength. And the more we talk about these things and people understand that it really is, that you can reach out, you can ask for help. It's not a weakness, it is a strength. And there are people there that want to help you. And there is a way to manage your mental state and how you are able to internalize your internal communication, because that's what it is at the end of the day. Yeah. It's how you communicate with yourself, the language that you use with yourself, and how you can put yourself in a better frame of life. And it's all covered by not only the words that you use, by your health, your diet, and just general take care of yourself.
I think you're right. I think what people sometimes forget is, whilst the stigma is less, but there's also a benefit of getting some help around this. Actually improving, let's call it your mental fitness, for example, actually making yourself mentally fitter. When I was at Lehman Brothers, I think 2008, I walked off the trading floor with mental health issues, and I sought help, sought therapy, and I was back on it. And whilst I left there before it crashed, I had another 12 years of kind of performing at the highest level. Now, without the help, I wouldn't have managed that. So there's also, it's not just a patch me up and send me on. This is changing the way that you can actually live and actually improving you, helping you actually fulfill all your potential. It's not just fix me, put a plaster on me. It's actually just, helping you fulfill what you want.
It's giving you a set of tools, right? You're having a set of tools of how you can cope.
Because I think a lot of people see mental illness as being the sort of psychiatrist, going to prescribe you drug type mental health. But in actual fact, a lot of it is just learning simple tools that can actually help you through the day-to-day. And actually, it's not a drug, it's not a medical or a drug solution. It's literally just a new approach, which is no different than learning to ride a bike, learning to use a new app, or, it's the tools that are there, and mental health professionals have those tools and know how to apply them. And, so in some ways, learn those tools and, get it, because life is getting more stressful. There's more distractions. There's more, stuff going on. And I think on that point too, it's interesting, because one of the things when I first got into this, I was looking at the news and I was sort of bringing the news together and doing it for property investors, but it was all bloody so negative. It was like, this many people are dying. And I tried to find how many people were recovering, and it was hard to find the detail. And the detail I could find was the figure, the worldwide figure. I couldn't find every country, recovery figures, because they just didn't exist. It was just one figure. But then when you go to the deaths, you could work out exactly where. I mean, there's a map of the UK with how many people died in every area. But try and find out how many people recovered. It's like the media in our whole society is so focused on dragging you down in the negativity. You got to, focus on the positivity. And I think that's one of the key skills too, of being able to look at it and see that actually it's not that bad.
That's why I don't like listening to the BBC. I call it the big black cloud. information that come out is so doom and gloom when there is so much positivity. You know, the last recession was talked down by the press, and this is the same. You know, if we haven't got something to look forward to and we keep talking it down, we will go there just because people have been convinced to go there without that being a reality. And it's so important they talk about the really positive stuff. You know, Captain Tom Phillips, what he's done and what he's achieved, literally just by walking around his garden, because people want that positivity. They want to have something to look forward to. And we should be doing that. The media shouldn't be, you know, every time they can criticise, it's very easy to be critical for everybody, whether it be Boris Johnson, the government. You know, it's very easy to sit back where we are and to criticise rather than all the decisions they've been taking, which has been immense. So we should look at the positive side and really appraise when they've put so many different measures in place rather than keep. And that's what people tend to do. They tend to look at negativity. Bad news sells as opposed to good news. And it's a time that we actually need to instill some really great news for positivity so people can look forward to coming out of lockdown. I certainly am.
Yeah, 100%. And it's an interesting thing because I think I spent the morning looking at various economists that I follow and just seeing what their hard data that they were putting on, what models they were saying and where they think we were. And actually, it was an amazing thing because normally I go to that and I'll see, right, this is going to be the worst case because these guys normally pull out their models and their models are just terrible. But actually, it was almost a surreal experience, you know, with some of these guys because some of them are actually talking, no, it's going to be a V-shaped recovery and this is why it's very different. And actually, for once, there's almost an air of positivity across, you know, and these are 4 or 5 UK economists. Because I stuck to the UK. I also have some US data, US guys and American guys. But to be fair, they're talking more about the US, which is a different story, and Australia, which is a different story. But, you know, it's interesting, actually. There is a lot of positive out there. You know, there is a lot of things you can focus on that are positive, like, you know, Tom, you know, and that. You know, it's an amazing thing, you know, those guys. But, yeah.
The sad thing is you had to search for that information. That information should be broadcast everywhere because it is very different to the rest of the information that we're getting. It is based on solid data. It's based on past markets with a proper reason as to why we will come out if certain things happen. So that's sort of information that needs to be broadcast to the mass media through, you know, the proper news channels, not what we've been seeing. And the stuff that you're doing, by the way, and your property Brett's rants are amazing because you are bringing some really fantastic information to the public that needs to. So people haven't subscribed, they should. It's great information. You sent it to me this morning. It's one of the first things I saw this morning. Put a great smile on my face.
Yeah. No. And I mean, that's you know, I try and keep it real. And I think that's with this mental health. You've got to keep it real. I mean, there's plenty of guys out there that are doing, you know, absolute depression, you know, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, I get it on my YouTube feed. You know, I've got a guy saying, you know, one day he says, you know, oh no, prices are definitely going to fall 50%, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you basing that on? You know, that just, you know, that's not even on any of the models. And he's like, well, I want to get on the property market and I'm hoping that's what will happen. It's like, you know,
wishful thinking.
And then you got the other guys that are, you know, clearly self-interest and, you know, they want their property to go up in value and, you know, but I think to be fair, there is a lot of good data out there. And, you know, actually, the UK, I mean, look, I think the way they dealt with the virus, cause I talk about 3 things. I talk about the virus and that side of it. I talk about the human side, which is, for the most part, the human tragedy and the economics. And, you know, really the virus, I think, is, you know, settling down now. The human tragedy stories are now really starting to come out, but also the human inspiration as well, because it's, you know, it's both sides. And the economics has been there throughout. But I think, you know, you've got to decide where you put your time. You know, it can be in negative or it can be in the positive, and I think the positive definitely. But so okay, so just summarising then. So we want to have goals. We want to stay positive. We've got our 60-second 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it was see, touch. Was it hear?
Oh.
Yeah, hear, smell, and taste.
Hear, smell, and taste. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't finish the word off. Yeah. So yeah. So 60 seconds, and that's really just about detaching from whatever was going on and repositioning yourself.
Just maybe give yourself, when you feel that it's there, it feels a bit intense, just do it. Just take the 60 seconds, start with a few deep breaths, and then just go into it. And just give yourself a rest. Just give yourself a break.
I might need a bit longer than that to do all of those things.
So we've got morning, having the bookends, as you said, the morning and the afternoon, so you can split the day from the work from the home. What else did we discover, or what else did we talk about?
Some of these social breaks, these social breaks, whether you make the lunch break social, some of the stuff that you guys have spoken about, and also just maybe, if possible, the place you're working isn't the same space that you're relaxing. Just physically separate what that is, and just, if you can, leave the work computer somewhere else when you're relaxing, if you can.
I've got one of my mates who's in a one-bedroom, it's a one-room, because it's an open-plan kitchen and room, and he's like a studio. And in Shoreditch, he's got one window, and that's his place that he's staying in. So
where he can go to work could be his office. You make his toilet into his seat.
Well, you know what? So he's furloughed, and so he loves this. I forget what it's called, Battlefield Tanks or something. It's a whatever player game. And so he reckons he's doing 20 hours a day just playing through that. I'm like, that's just ridiculous. But anyway, he's Larry. And to be fair, he's got the full kit so he's talking and he's got the whole social life. And I don't play it, so I don't even understand it. But
my son's there too.
Yeah, he seems quite happy. I mean, if that's what it takes to get you away, I suppose, I'm not sure that's the. But anyway, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't know enough about it.
If it kind of works, it works.
Yeah.
So he worked in hospitality, so he's lost his job very early on, but he's not too concerned. So he's happy. But I don't think it's different people have different needs. I've got 4 kids, so I'm glad we've got some outside space and some various areas, and we've got a 5-bedroom place that we live in, so it's not too bad, So but no, all right, guys. Well, thank you for your time, and Simon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
And Immanuel, as always, a pleasure. And guys, thanks very much. And I'm sure Ashley will be back and Jimmy will be back next week. And we'll chat to you soon. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home for another couple of weeks. All right, guys. See you later.